Welcome to Fairy Tale Access, where the head fairy's quest is to prove that fairy tales do exist in actual time rather than once upon a time. Together, we will unravel the heroes, young and old, who turn dreams into reality. These are the people who still believe in happily ever after. The discoveries will bend even our most cynical non-believers into believing in fairy tales. Hi, welcome to Fairy Tale Access. If you love secrets and coincidences, author Barbara Roman has skillfully woven a labyrinth of duplicity, and it's like a psychological thriller, and it will just take you away. Unbelievable. How did you do this, Barbara? Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's just wonderful. Thank you for having me. How did I do this? That's a very good question. Most of my books were like on and off projects through the years. I would work on like 6 or 7 projects at a time. And A Man's Face was something that was a premise, maybe 30 years ago. And I just came, oh, well, this is a good premise. And I just throw it in the file. And then I'd work on other things and children's books, music. I did my metaphysical series. And then every so often when I'm done with a project, I say, oh, I want to go back and do something else. A Man's Face is my second suspense. Whatever Became of Sin was the first. But I think it's because through my life, I've always been interested in character-driven stories. I watched a lot of courtroom dramas, mysteries, suspense on TV. I read a lot of books, things like that. So I think it's like in the back of your mind somewhere. And it's a counterbalance to the spiritual stories that I worked on. Mm-hmm. But in the end, all stories are morality tales. And all the characters have some sort of a karmic connection to one another, and they have this cosmic collision of backgrounds and purposes. And so the story just kind of gels. You get a little thread of a plot. You write a scene, and then you dive into it. But I had to do a lot of research, even though it's based in San Diego, where I live. That was natural. I still did a lot of research on the wine industry and, the legal system and all the landmarks. And then you start putting it together into not an outline per se, but you do that later. But you say, how can I make the characters interesting? And as you go along and as you write a little here and a little there, things pop in your head. Oh, that would be good. Let's do this. Let's create this for the character. Or I've got to fill in this hole. You can't leave any holes in a suspense story. You have to tie it all up. So at the end, there is a surprise, but all the questions are answered. So you don't want to leave anything untold. So it kind of comes together through a variety of different ways. But then when I'm really ready to dive into it, I dive into it, and that's my only project.
Wow.
So that's kind of how I did it.
How long did it take you to write it?
Well, when I finally picked it up last year, I would say a book usually takes me kind of close to a year. Like I say, that was in my file for like 30 years. And then I pulled it out after I did all my other books. And I would say once I get into a book, it might take me several months to a year. I'm not a natural storyteller. Some people can just pop out those stories, one right after another. But it takes time for me. And I don't always write every day. But I'm always thinking about it. I'm always doing research. I'm contemplating. And when I do other things, ideas come to me. So I would say it took about a year of everything from beginning to end, getting it edited and, rewritten and polished and off to the publisher and things like that.
And it spans several decades, but it's so well woven. I mean, it's like that phone call you have with your best girlfriend about what's going on in the news, and you're trying to figure out who did it while the rest of the
Yes.
country is still searching for something. Like when a child goes missing, it just has all of that adrenaline pumping. I can't put this book down. Oh, it was
Oh, thank you.
amazing. It just kept
Thank
me up
you.
really late. I just had to finish it. And then I had to go back and read it again to make sure that it was as good as I thought it was. Because
Oh,
how did she get it? But then it was just all those coincidences that tied people
yes.
together. And
Yes.
it totally blows you away at different parts. It was so good. Really.
Well, thank you. I just don't know how I developed that style because in mostly all my books, I do a prologue, which will kind of set the scene, which I did in this, the first chapter. There are like 3 murders, basically, and you kind of know who did it. But then you move into another character and you say, well, how does he, connect to all these people? Because he has a totally different life. The case he's working on, little by little by little, it's just, connected to these people that he doesn't know, but we know how bad they are. So it's just like a puzzle, and you have to put the pieces together properly, otherwise it's not going to work. And you keep going over and over it. And I did have one reviewer say about another book, I had no idea where this book was going, and that's what kept me interested, because there were so many different characters and scenarios, and all of a sudden everything came together and it all made sense.
And you were
So that's,
so good at giving like little tiny hints along the way.
yeah.
You have a lovely style of writing.
Thank you. Thank you. I try to learn the technique of writing, which is important to keep people guessing, to always have something at the end of a chapter that's like an, oh my, what's going to happen next kind of thing. And so I'm glad that I pulled it off. You never know. You never know when you write a book if it's going to be good, if people are going to like it. And I hope your viewers do. I hope they pick it up and enjoy it as much as you did.
Oh, absolutely. What is your background? Just so we have a better idea of maybe how you approach the story.
Well, my background is, as I mentioned to you before, I was born in Philadelphia. I'm a World War II baby. I'm 78 years old. So basically, I grew up mostly with books and radio. But music was a huge part of my life. I wanted to be a professional singer, and eventually I was, and still am. I still do a concert now and then. So music is a big part of my life, but I always read, I always wrote in school, did little essays, little stories, but I didn't start writing fiction. I did a lot of writing in college and for newspapers and things, but I didn't start writing fiction, I guess, until the 90s or so. And ideas just started to come to me. Maybe it's because I wasn't singing as much. So it's kind of like one creative form nurtures the other. If I'm not singing, I'm writing. If I'm not writing, I'm singing, but eventually I was focusing in on my writing. And just a lot of little different stories came to me, children's books, and then eventually novels. And so in my stories, there's a lot of music in my metaphysical books. But they just happen to it's an inspiration kind of thing. You're tapped on the shoulder by that muse, it says, do this. And if a storyline captivates me enough to say, I want to keep working on this, even if it takes me years, you just keep working on it. And eventually you come up with something that gels together.
How did you keep track of the characters and their relationships and who killed who?
Oh, well, who killed who was very easy. That was very easy because I knew exactly what was happening. That first opening chapter really gave me so much to work with. And then, of course, the character of the lawyer, who's, completely separate, that he doesn't know he's connected to these people until later on. But you do keep track. There's not a lot of characters in this book that I needed to worry about because it just came naturally. It all fit together. So it wasn't difficult to keep track of the characters, just in what they were doing and what their motivation was important.
Yes. The motivation. It was so different too. It was just the whole psychology behind some of the people involved, the way they thought about things, their entitlement, their not entitlement.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. If that's feeling of entitlement that they have, the amoral aspect of their life, the way they think, the way they were raised, the way they develop their own philosophy of life, which is a me kind of philosophy. And how do I get out of this one and kind of thing? And I don't want to be held accountable for anything. And so it's up to the other people. And I have to find a way for the other characters to hold them accountable. And so then you find it through the law or through some other aspect.
Yeah. I really love the ex-wife's part in all of it. So fulfilling. It's a vengeance.
Oh, yes. Madalena, yeah, the ex-wife. Yes, she was quite a character. I saw her as someone who was very strong and just felt very betrayed and wanted revenge. I like revenge in my story.
I loved it. I really hung on to that part. I'm like, yes, she's going to do it.
I know. Go get them. Go get them. Both of my suspense stories have a lot of really sweet revenge towards the end. Yeah. So it's good.
So tell me a little bit about the metaphysical series.
Well, the Moonsinger series started out many years ago. I was into spiritual, and I'm talking about not religious exploration, but metaphysical, because I was into music a lot and I was writing articles about the effects of music on your body, mind, and spirit. And I researched a lot of books on the subject. And so kind of got me started into the metaphysical area. And then one day I went to a crystal party. I don't know if you're familiar with a crystal party, but you go there. It was a woman who was a psychic, a medium. She had these little parties, and they lay out all these crystals on the table. And you're supposed to move your hand over the crystals. And the one that you're supposed to have attracts you. It picks you. So you feel this vibration. So I don't know if you can see it, but this is how the Moonsinger series started. I'm going to hold up this crystal. I don't know if you can see it. I found this, what is called a Singer crystal. Can you see that?
I can see it there, yes.
Yeah. So basically, I looked at it. I took it home, and she told me that because of the way that the two crystals were combined, it's unusual. Instead of being one crystal, there's like two crystals combined. She said it was called a Singer. So, of course, I'm a singer, that's why it picked me. So I brought it home and I would look at it. And the more I looked at it, I realized, oh, this looks like a ship. So there's the hull and the rudder and the mast. So the more I looked at it, I was inspired at first, a little children's book, a little boy who has this boat that takes him on wild adventures, this little crystal clipper. So, but then it started to grow and grow in scope. And it became a novel. And I knew when I was writing the novel, of course, there was a lot of aspects to it. And the Moonsinger, of course, is the ship, the mystical ship. And then I always knew that it had to be a trilogy. There had to be 3 parts to this. So the character of David, the young boy in the story, he's quite an interesting character. He's a young teenager, very interested in music, computers, and crystal energy. He's dealing with the death of his mother, and so he experiments a lot with his crystals, and he's deaf. That was very important to the story. He was not born deaf, so he could speak well, but the aspect of his being deaf led me to create an aspect of the story where he would experiment with his crystals, conjure up this mystical sailing ship, which would take him on these wild journeys to other worlds where he could hear. He could hear in these other worlds. But the basis of the story is that he's trying to resolve personal issues at home. He's got very real world issues. The death of his mother hit him very hard, and he's trying to deal with that. His father's job was taken away from him. His sister was crippled in the car crash that killed his mother. And so there's all these things that he's trying to deal with, and he wants to make things better. So he is basically kind of chosen, if you will, by the forces that be, to go on these journeys. And each book, there's 3 books in the trilogy, he goes on a different journey to solve different problems at home. And the hearing aspect of it is extremely important. And I can't go too much into details with that, but that's basically how it started. And it just kind of grew from there. It just grew from there. I just kept getting more and more ideas. And the finale, The Windrose, I think I'm the happiest with that. And then a few years later, I wrote the prequel. I said the mother's story was never told. So she was such a driving force in his life to do all these things. And he was quite a musician himself. So I said I had to tell the mother's story as well. So that's how I wrote Before the Boy. Before the Boy is my newest book. It's the only book that isn't like 30 years germinating. It was brand new. And I built the story based on the Moonsinger series and David's character. And so now I have a 4-part series.
That's wonderful. I'm not sure how to explain your writing style, but it's fluid. It almost just like whisks you away softly. So I think growing up with World War II and the drama and the awful things that happen, it's the way that you can deliver it, the story.
I think that's part of it. It could be part of the things that I read when I was younger. They had a different style of writing in those days. It was more classical literature. And of course, over time, literature changed to be a little more trendy, a little bit more, current. But I always had that feel for a softness. It's kind of like a feminine voice. Even with my suspense stories, there's more of a feminine voice. There's a softness about it. And I think it's just something that I work at really hard. And I love words. And so every word has to count. And I don't like pages and pages of narration. I'm not very good at that, but I try to use as much expository as I can to set a scene or to describe something. So it's, I think my voice has pretty well developed at this point that I can't change it. I wouldn't want to.
No, I wouldn't want you to either. It's really wonderful. It was so fresh and inspiring. Even though everything was falling apart for people, but it was just so wonderfully well done. What was your favorite book growing up?
Oh, that's a hard one because I read so many different books, from the little golden books as a child to fairy tales, Grimm's fairy tales. Then I started reading things like the Thornbirds. I would read everything from philosophy to the great stage plays to things like The Godfather and, a wide variety of stories that were, of course, character driven. And so I can't really say that I had a favorite novel then, But now I'm really kind of captivated by a book called Winter's Tale. It's not a new book by Mark Halperin, I think, and is so lyrical that it's almost hard to get through. It's 700 pages, which will take me the rest of my life to go through. But his imagery is so beautiful. Of course, I could never copy that. I wouldn't want to. But it just depends. I mean, I read everything from biographies to novels to trashy romance magazines. So if something would grab me, Captain from Castile is an interesting book because I was a big fan of the actor Tyrone Power. I just adored Tyrone Power. And he made a movie called Captain from Castile. And so I went to the library and got that book. It was so beautifully written. Madame Bovary, those kinds of stories from the days of old. So.
Yeah. I think you have that soft classic overlay to the way that your style is. It's so wonderful. It's like, I just want to know more. I know she's going to tell me more.
I know. Yeah, you have to make sure you give people enough. You can't stop it too soon, and you can't, it's kind of different. It's technique, learning technique. I try to make each book better than the last one, of course. I don't think I've written my best book. And my newest project, which I know will take me about a year, is probably the most challenging that I'm going to undertake because it spans a couple hundred years and from France to America. So it's going to be a big project.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. And a big challenge.
And actually it's going to be a prequel to the prequel. I'm going back to the Moonsinger series, but from a completely different vantage point. So I can't tell you too much because it's really just brand new, but I needed a challenge, and every day I think, can you pull this off? Can you really pull this off? I'm not sure if I can.
Were there any experiences in your life that you created a story around in any of the books you've written to date?
No, not experiences. There might be a frame of reference, like this book is based in San Diego, so I live in that area, so I'm familiar with that. One of the characters in the book is a pop music idol, so that was natural. I needed to find a profession for him because he did not want to work in his father's winery. He wanted something else, and his dream, of course, was always to be a musician, a pop star, but he had this horrible scar. He had this awful scar because of his earlier transgressions, if you will. And so I never really, I might pull a little thing here or there that's a frame of reference, but nothing biographical at all.
And the twist at the end?
I can't tell. And no, let's not tell anybody.
You can't tell what the twist is. But how can we? I just, it was just astounding. Like, you're like, and then you're like, really? And then you're like, the guy went into it.
Well, because the main character, the lawyer who has, experienced all of these horrible tragedies in his life, and his world falls apart when he finds out who's responsible for these tragedies. And he's always been struggling with his own purpose in life. I think all my books are really about finding your purpose, what it is you're meant to do that's larger than yourself. Mm-hmm. And so towards the end, he ruminates and just kind of explores that. And so he knows that there's something that he must do. And I'm not going to tell anybody what it is he must do because that's the kicker at the end.
No, I just loved it. It was so well done. And it really was like a labyrinth. It was just this maze, and the roadblocks in between, the misinformation, all of it. Like, and some of it, you're like, why didn't they ever get that part? It was just like you just gave us great things to think about along the way. And I seriously really loved that. The ex-wife. She was my
Yeah,
favorite.
and she was good. She was good too. She was good too. I like the fun way that all the clues started coming together, and the little details about where the blood came from, where the blood stain came from, and lots of different things, and the knife and all of that. I had to lay out those little kind of clues like a little bird seed along a path. Where is this going to take me? And when is he going to find out? When is he going to discover this? And how does this fit together? And that's a big challenge, and that's the fun part.
Yeah, it was definitely those scales of justice or
Yes,
possibly injustice.
yes,
And that just have to wait a while in some cases. But I loved how
yeah.
you went into the whole psyche of these people and the things that drove them to do some of the things they did.
Yes, well, that's important. That's how we even look at people in real life. What is your motivation for doing this? Why are you doing this thing? Why am I doing this? What am I thinking? And how did that come about? So that's important to put into a story.
Yeah,
That makes it interesting.
what was so good about it was that you're like, wow, this could have really happened in real life. Where, a lot of times what's happening in real life is stranger than any fiction story that you've heard. This was just like that, but the flip. It was like, wow, this could actually happen. Like,
I think it probably has happened,
happened.
in the context of the legal industry, if you call it an industry. Yeah, these things happen and they're frustrating and they're like, oh my gosh, no, this can't happen. And we see it every day. I think we see it every day on television. Yes.
Definitely. Well, thank you for sharing so much about yourself and the books that you write.
Oh, I'm so happy to do it. And maybe at some point in time, I can come back and we can talk about the fairy tale of the Moonsinger series one day.
Oh, I would love to. Until next time, keep asking questions. And if you want a really fantastic suspense novel, B. Roman, short for Barbara Roman, will not let you down. She'll just reel you right in.